Love is a decision. It is a judgment. It is a promise. If love were only a feeling, there would be no basis for the promise to love each other forever. A feeling comes and it may go. How can I judge that it will stay forever when my act does not involve judgment and decision? A person who has not been completely alienated, who has remained sensitive and able to feel, who has not lost the sense of dignity, who is not yet for sale, who can still suffer over the suffering of others, who has not acquired fully the having mode of existence. Briefly, a person who has remained a person and not become a thing cannot help feeling lonely, powerless, isolated in present-day society. He cannot help doubting himself and his own convictions, if not his sanity. He cannot help suffering, even though he can experience moments of joy and clarity that are absent in the life of his normal contemporaries. Not rarely will he suffer from the neurosis that results from the situation of a sane man living in an insane society, rather than that of the more conventional neurosis of a sick man trying to adapt himself to a sick society. In the process of going further in his analysis, i.e. of growing to greater independence and productivity, his neurotic symptoms will cure themselves. Love isn't something natural. Rather, it requires discipline, concentration, patience, faith, and the overcoming of narcissism. It isn't a feeling, it is a practice. If other people do not understand our behavior, so what? Their request that we must only do what they understand is an attempt to dictate to us. If this is being asocial or irrational in their eyes, so be it. Mostly, they resent our freedom and our courage to be ourselves. We owe nobody an explanation or an accounting, as long as our acts do not hurt or infringe on them. How many lives have been ruined by this need to explain, which usually implies that the explanation be understood, i.e. approved. Let your deeds be judged, and from your deeds, your real intentions. But know that a free person owes an explanation only to himself, to his reason and his conscience, and the few who may have a justified claim for explanation. Paradoxically, the ability to be alone is the condition for the ability to love. Immature love says, "I love you because I need you." Mature love says, "I need you because I love you." Creativity requires the courage to let go of certainties. The main condition for the achievement of love is the overcoming of one's narcissism. The narcissistic orientation is one in which one experiences as real only that which exists within oneself. while the phenomenon in the outside world have no reality in themselves, but are experienced only from the viewpoint of their being useful or dangerous to one. The opposite pole to narcissism is objectivity. It is the faculty to see other people and things as they are, objectively, and to be able to separate this objective picture from a picture which is formed by one's desires and fears. That millions of people share the same forms of mental pathology does not make these people sane. Love is not primarily a relationship to a specific person. It is an attitude, an orientation of character, which determines the relatedness of a person to the world as a whole, not towards one object of love. If a person loves only one other person and is indifferent to the rest of his fellow men, his love is not love, but a symbiotic attachment, or an enlarged egotism. Yet, most people believe that love is constituted by the object, not by the faculty. One cannot be deeply responsive to the world without being saddened very often. Man is the only animal for whom his own existence is a problem which he has to solve. There is perhaps no phenomenon which contains so much destructive feeling as moral indignation, which permits envy or hate to be acted out under the guise of virtue. Love is the only sane and satisfactory answer to the problem of human existence. Modern man has transformed himself into a commodity. He experiences his life energy as an investment with which he should make the highest profit. Considering his position and the situation on the personality market, he is alienated from himself, from his fellow men, and from nature. His main aim is profitable exchange of his skills, knowledge, and of himself, his personality package, with others who are equally intent on a fair and profitable exchange. Life has no goal except the one to move, no principle except the one to fair exchange, no satisfaction except the one to consume. Nationalism is our form of incest. It is our idolatry. It is our insanity. Patriotism is its cult. Just as love for one individual, which excludes the love for others, is not love, love for one's country, which is not part of one's love for humanity, is not love, but idolatrous worship. Love means to commit oneself without guarantee, to give oneself completely in the hope that our love will produce love in the loved person. Love is an act of faith, and whoever is of little faith is also of little love. It is naively assumed that the fact that the majority of people share certain ideas and feelings proves the validity of these ideas and feelings. Nothing could be further from the truth. Consensual validation, as such, has no bearing on the reason or on mental health. What does one person give to another? He gives of himself, of the most precious he has. He gives of his life. This does not necessarily mean that he sacrifices his life for the other, but that he gives of him that which is alive in him. He gives him of his joy, of his interest, of his understanding, of his knowledge, of his humor, of his sadness, of all expressions and manifestations of that which is alive in him. Thus, giving of his life, he enriches the other person. He enhances the other's sense of aliveness by enhancing his own sense of aliveness. He does not give in order to receive. Giving is in itself exquisite joy. But in giving, he cannot help bringing something to life in the other person, and this which is brought to life reflects back to him. Man's main task is to give birth to himself. The quest for certainty blocks the search for meaning. Uncertainty is the very condition to impel man to unfold his powers. Modern man thinks he loses something, time, when he does not do things quickly, yet he does not know what to do with the time he gains except kill it. The faculty to think objectively is reason. The emotional attitude behind reason is that of humility. To be objective, to use one's reason, is possible only if one has achieved an attitude of humility. If one has emerged from the dreams of omniscience and omnipotence, which one has as a child, love, being dependent on the relative absence of narcissism, requires the development of humility, objectivity, and reason. I must try to see the difference between my picture of a person and his behavior, as it is narcissistically distorted, and the person's reality as it exists, regardless of my interests, needs, and fears. Giving is the highest expression of potency. In the very act of giving, I experience my strength, my wealth, my power. This experience of heightened vitality and potency fills me with joy. I experience myself as overflowing, spending, alive, hence as joyous. Giving is more joyous than receiving, not because it is a deprivation, but because in the act of giving lies the expression of my aliveness. To have faith requires courage, the ability to take a risk, the readiness even to accept pain and disappointment. Whoever insists on safety and security as primary conditions of life cannot have faith. Whoever shuts himself off in a system of defense where distance and possession are his means of security makes himself a prisoner. To be loved and to love need courage, the courage to judge certain values as of ultimate concern, and to take the jump and to stake everything on these values. The task we must set for ourselves is not to feel secure, but to be able to tolerate insecurity. The real opposition is that between the ego-bound man, whose existence is structured by the principle of having, and the free man, who has overcome his egocentricity. Is love an art? Then it requires knowledge and effort. To die is poignantly bitter, but the idea of having to die without having lived is unbearable. Most people are not even aware of their need to conform. They live under the illusion that they follow their own ideas and inclinations, that they are individualists, that they have arrived at their opinions as their result of their own thinking, and that it just happens that their ideas are the same as those of the majority. The whole life of the individual is nothing but the process of giving birth to himself. Indeed, we should be fully born when we die, although it is the tragic fate of most individuals to die before they are born. The more the drive towards life is thwarted, the stronger is the drive towards destruction. The more life is realized, the less is the strength of destructiveness. Destructiveness is the outcome of unlived life. Not he who has much is rich, but he who gives much. We are a society of notoriously unhappy people, lonely, anxious, depressed, destructive, dependent. People who are glad when we have killed the time we are trying so hard to save. If I am what I have, and if what I have is lost, then who am I? Who will tell whether one happy moment of love, or the joy of breathing, or walking on a bright morning and smelling the fresh air, is not worth all the suffering and effort which life implies? Freedom is not a constant attribute which we either have or have not. In fact, there is no such thing as freedom except as a word and an abstract concept. There is only one reality: the act of freeing ourselves and the process of making choices. In this process, the degree of our capacity to make choices varies with each act, with our practice of life. We forget that although freedom of speech constitutes an important victory in the battle against old restraints, modern man is in a position where much of what he thinks and says are the things that everybody else thinks and says. That he has not acquired the ability to think originally, that is, for himself, which alone gives meaning to this claim that nobody can interfere with the expression of his thoughts. Our conscious motivations, ideas, and beliefs are a blend of false information, biases, irrational passions, rationalizations, prejudices, in which morsels of truth swim around and give the reassurance, albeit false, that the whole mixture is real and true. The thinking processes attempt to organize this whole cesspool of illusions according to the laws of plausibility. This level of consciousness is supposed to reflect reality. It is the map we use for organizing our life. There is nothing inhuman, evil, or irrational which does not give some comfort, provided it is shared by a group. In love, the paradox occurs that two beings become one, and yet remain two. People do not see that the main question is not, am I loved? Which to a large extent is the question, am I approved of? Am I protected? Am I admired? The main question is, can I love? Most people see the problem of love primarily as that of being loved rather than that of loving, of one's capacity to love. Hence the problem to them is how to be loved, how to be lovable. In pursuit of this aim, they follow several paths. One, which is especially used by men, is to be successful, to be as powerful and rich as the social margin of one's position permits. Another, used especially by women, is to make oneself attractive by cultivating one's body, dress, etc. Many of the ways to make oneself lovable are the same as those used to make oneself successful. To win friends and influence people. As a matter of fact, what most people in our culture mean by being lovable is essentially a mixture between being popular and having sex appeal. Alienation, as we find it in modern society, is almost total. Man has created a world of man-made things, as it never existed before. He has constructed a complicated social machine to administer the technical machine he built. The more powerful and gigantic the forces are which he unleashes, the more powerless he feels himself as a human being. He is owned by his creations and has lost ownership of himself. Man's happiness today consists in having fun. Having fun lies in the satisfaction of consuming and taking in commodities, sights, foods, drinks, people, lectures, books, movies. All are consumed, swallowed. The world is one great object for our appetite, a big apple, a big bottle, a big breast. We are the sucklers, the eternally expectant ones, the hopeful ones, and the eternally disappointed ones. to spare oneself from grief at all cost can be achieved only at the price of total detachment, which excludes the ability to experience happiness. Love is possible only if two persons communicate with each other from the center of their existence. Hence, if each one of them experiences himself from the center of his existence, only in this central experience is human reality. Only here is aliveness. Only here is the basis for love. Love, experienced thus, is a constant challenge. It is not a resting place, but a moving, growing, working together, even whether there is harmony or conflict, joy or sadness, is secondary to the fundamental fact that two people experience themselves from the essence of their existence, that they are one with each other by being one with themselves, rather than by fleeing from themselves. There is only one proof for the presence of love, the depth of the relationship, and the aliveness and strength in each person concerned. This is the fruit by which love is recognized. Modern man lives under the illusion that he knows what he wants, while actually he wants what he is supposed to want. In order to accept this, it is necessary to realize that to know what one really wants is not comparatively easy, as most people think, but one of the most difficult problems any human being has to solve. It is a task we frantically try to avoid by accepting ready-made goals, as though they were our own. Education is identical with helping the child realize his potentialities. The opposite of education is manipulation, which is based on the absence of faith in the growth of potentialities and the connection that a child will be right only if the adults put into him what is desirable and suppress what seems to be undesirable. The frightened individual seeks for somebody or something to tie himself to. He cannot bear his own individual self any longer, and he tries frantically to get rid of it and to feel security again by the elimination of this burden, the self. The only truly affluent are those who do not want more than they have. One is not loved accidentally. One's own power to love produces love, just as being interested makes one interesting. People are concerned with the question of whether they are attractive, while they forget that the essence of attractiveness is their own capacity to love. To love a person productively implies to care and to feel responsible for his life, not only for his physical existence, but for the growth and development of all his human powers. To love productively is incompatible with being passive, with being an onlooker at the loved person's life. It implies labor and care and the responsibility for his growth. Mother's love is peace. It need not be acquired. It need not be deserved. Critical and radical thought will only bear fruit when it is blended with the most precious quality man is endowed with, the love of life.